Good. We are very fortunate that the University of Chicago's own Mark Strand has agreed to inaugurate this year's series. Mark Strand has published 11 books of poetry, including Blizzard of One, which won the 1999 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. He has also published a book of stories, and in addition to being a painter and printmaker himself, is author of several books of art criticism, including monographs on William Bailey and Edward Hopper. In 1990 to 1991, as you know, he was the U.S. Poet Laureate. Among his many other honors are a MacArthur Fellowship and the Bollingen Prize for Poetry. Mark Strand's poems are like late essays on the particular. Attempts not to hold on to the thing itself, his poems are never descriptive in that sense, or to hold on to the human selves with which the poems are concerned. The poems are not lyrical in that sense, but rather to hold on to the ways in which an unstable I or you or it takes on an appearance. How, in his words, it comes forward. How things come into view, then drop from sight. Centrally, the way in which things persist, or a self persists, as here in an early poem. You sit in a chair, touched by nothing, feeling the old self become the older self. Or here in a later poem, how could I not be only myself, this dream of flesh from moment to moment? When Strand writes that nobody sees it happening, but the architecture of our time is becoming the architecture of the next time, the observation is typically for him at once elegiac and consolatory, a version already of the poem's concluding lines. If only we knew how long the ruins would last, we would never complain. In Strand's philosophy, you might say, particulars are always ruins, exemplary mainly of their passing, held even by a kind of indirect glow that the poet, like a painter, casts onto them as though from within. The curious effect of this orientation is to suspend the usual distinction between particular and general, or concrete and abstract. If on the one hand, as an early poem puts it, items of no particular day swarm down, moves of the mind that never quite make it as poems. It is also true that the items, be they objects or lives, that do make it as poems, are given to the reader as already captured by their story, and thus necessarily as themselves too items of no particular day. In The Monument from 1978, Strand explored this experience of capture or captivation as the relationship between the writer in search of immortality and the future reader on whom that immortality also depends. A necessary someone who, as someone, is both particular and general, who, to put this another way, is an example, and exemplary in the same way a writer is, or as any speaker is at the moment of utterance. Thus, someone was saying something about shadows covering the field, about how things pass, how one sleeps towards morning and the morning goes. Like all his interrogated particulars, Strand's selves carry this kind of something or someone reality. And one unsettling result of this indeterminacy is that his pronouns seem less to refer than to summon up a kind of haze. You take my arm and say something will happen, something unusual for which we were always prepared. I sat in a room that was almost dark, looking out to sea. I sat in a beach chair surrounded by tall grass, so that only the top of my hat showed. He stands under her window, calling her name. And one last example, which concludes his delirium waltz. I cannot remember when it began. The lights were low. We were walking across the floor, over polished wood and inlaid marble, through shallow water, through dustings of snow, through cloudy figures of fallen light. I cannot remember, but I think you were there, whoever you are. If something remains stable here, if something gives the language purpose, it is the dance. The walk across the floor, persisting as even the most compelling circumstances fall away. As another poem differently puts it, henceforth, any idea of yourself must include a body surrounding a song. Please join me in welcoming Mark Strand.
I made a list of poems that I intend to read, but I may change my mind at any time. I thought I'd read some very early poems first. I mean, very early. Keeping things, can you hear me? Because I have a stuffed head. I mean, not stuffed with good things. Keeping things whole. In a field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing. When I walk, I part the air, and always the air moves in to fill the spaces where my body's been. We all have reasons for moving. I move to keep things whole. There's always the temptation to say something. I've just said something, but I'm going to resist. The coming of light. Even this late, it happens. The coming of love, the coming of light. You wake and the candles are lit as if by themselves. Stars gather, dreams pour into your pillows, sending up warm bouquets of air. Even this late, the bones of the body shine, and tomorrow's dust flares into breath. Elegy from my father. This is a poem in 6 sections. Robert Strand, 1908 to 1968. 1. The empty body. The hands were yours, the arms were yours, but you were not there. The eyes were yours, but they were closed and would not open. The distant sun was there. The moon poised on the hill's white shoulder was there. The wind on Bedford Basin was there. The pale green light of winter was there. Your mouth was there, but you were not there. When somebody spoke, there was no answer. Clouds came down and buried the buildings along the water, and the water was silent. The gulls stared. The years, the hours that would not find you turned in the wrists of others. There was no pain. It had gone. There were no secrets. There was nothing to say. The shade scattered its ashes. The body was yours, but you were not there. The air shivered against its skin. The dark leaned into its eyes, but you were not there. 2. Answers. Why did you travel? Because the house was cold. Why did you travel? Because it is what I have always done between sunset and sunrise. What did you wear? I wore a blue suit, a white shirt, yellow tie, and yellow socks. What did you wear? I wore nothing. A scarf of pain kept me warm. Who did you sleep with? I slept with a different woman each night. Who did you sleep with? I slept alone. I've always slept alone. Why did you lie to me? I always thought I told the truth. Why did you lie to me? Because the truth lies like nothing else, and I love the truth. Why are you going? Because nothing means much to me anymore. Why are you going? I don't know. I have never known. How long shall I wait for you? Do not wait for me. I am tired, and I want to lie down. Are you tired, and do you want to lie down? Yes, I am tired, and I want to lie down. 3. You're dying. Nothing could stop you. Not the best day, not the quiet, not the ocean rocking. You went on with your dying. Not the trees under which you walked, not the trees that shaded you, not the doctor who warned you, the white-haired young doctor who saved you once. You went on with your dying. Nothing could stop you. Not your son, not your daughter who fed you and made you into a child again, not your son who thought you would live forever, not the wind that shook your lapels, not the stillness that offered itself to your motion, not your shoes that grew heavier, not your eyes that refused to look ahead. Nothing could stop you. You sat in your room and stared at the city and went on with your dying. You went to work and let the cold enter your clothes. You let blood seep into your socks. Your face turned white. Your voice cracked in two. You leaned on your cane, but nothing could stop you. Not your friends who gave you advice, not your son, not your daughter who watched you grow small, not fatigue that lived in your sighs, not your lungs that would fill with water, not your sleeves that carried the pain of your arms. Nothing could stop you. You went on with your dying. When you played with children, you went on with your dying. When you sat down to eat, when you woke up at night, wet with tears, your body sobbing, you went on with your dying. Nothing could stop you. Not the past, not the future with its good weather, not the view from your window, the view of the graveyard, not the city, not the terrible city with its wooden buildings, not defeat, not success. You did nothing but go on with your dying. You put your watch to your ear. You felt yourself slipping. You lay on the bed. You folded your arms over your chest, and you dreamed of the world without you, of the space under the trees, of the space in your room, of the spaces that would now be empty of you. And you went on with your dying. Nothing could stop you. Not your breathing, not your life, not the life you wanted, not the life you had. Nothing could stop you. 4, your shadow. You have your shadow. The places where you were have given it back. The hallways and bare lawns of the orphanage have given it back. The newsboy's home has given it back. The streets of New York have given it back, and so have the streets of Montreal. The rooms in Beijing where lizards would snap at mosquitoes have given it back. The dark streets of Manaus and the damp streets of Rio have given it back. Mexico City, where you wanted to leave it, has given it back. And Halifax, where the harbor would wash its hands of you, has given it back. You have your shadow. When you traveled, the white wake of your going sent your shadow below, but when you arrived, it was there to greet you. You had your shadow. The doorways you entered lifted your shadow from you, and when you went out, gave it back. You had your shadow. Even when you forgot your shadow, you found it again. It had been with you. Once in the country, the shade of a tree covered your shadow, and you were not known. Once in the country, you thought your shadow had been cast by somebody else. Your shadow said nothing. Your clothes carried your shadow inside. When you took them off, it spread like the dark of your past. And your words that float like leaves in an air that is lost, in a place no one knows, gave you back your shadow. Your friends gave you back your shadow. Your enemies gave you back your shadow. They said it was heavy and would cover your grave. When you died, your shadow slept at the mouth of the furnace and ate ashes for bread. It rejoiced among ruins. It watched while others slept. It shone like crystal among the tombs. It composed itself like air. It wanted to be like snow on water. It wanted to be nothing, but that was not possible. It came to my house. It sat on my shoulders. Your shadow is yours. I told it so. I said it was yours. I have carried it with me too long. I give it back. 5. Morning. They mourn for you when you rise at midnight and the dew glitters on the stone of your cheeks. They mourn for you. They lead you back into the empty house. They carry the chairs and tables inside. They sit you down and teach you to breathe. And your breath burns. It burns the pine box, and the ashes fall like sunlight. They give you a book and tell you to read. They listen, and their eyes fill with tears. The women stroke your fingers. They comb the yellow back into your hair. They shave the frost from your beard. They knead your thighs. They dress you in fine clothes. They rub your hands to keep them warm. They feed you. They offer you money. They get on their knees and beg you not to die. When you rise at midnight, they mourn for you. They close their eyes and whisper your name over and over. But they cannot drag the buried light from your veins. They cannot reach your dreams. Old man, there's no way. Rise and keep rising. It does no good. They mourn for you the way they can. The 6th and last section is called The New Year. It is winter and the new year. Nobody knows you. Away from the stars, from the rain of light, you lie under the weather of stones. There is no thread to lead you back. Your friends doze in the dark of pleasure and cannot remember. Nobody knows you. You are the neighbor of nothing. You do not see the rain falling and the man walking away, the soiled wind blowing its ashes across the city. You do not see the sun dragging the moon like an echo. You do not see the bruised heart go up in flames. The skulls of the innocent turn into smoke. You do not see the scars of plenty, the eyes without light. It is over. It is winter and the new year. The meek are hauling their skins into heaven. The hopeless are suffering the cold with those who have nothing to hide. It is over, and nobody knows you. There is starlight drifting on the black water. There are stones in the sea no one has seen. There is a shore and people are waiting, and nothing comes back, because it is over, because there is silence instead of a name, because it is winter and the new year. change of pace. Man and Camel. On the eve of my 40th birthday, I sat on the porch having a smoke when out of the blue a man and a camel happened by. Neither uttered a sound at first, but as they drifted up the street and out of town, the two of them began to sing. Yet what they sang is still a mystery to me. The words were indistinct and the tune too ornamental to recall. Into the desert they went, and as they went, their voices rose as one above the sifting sound of wind-blown sand. The wonder of their singing, its elusive blend of man and camel, seemed an ideal image for all uncommon couples. Was this the night that I had waited for so long? I wanted to believe it was, but just as they were vanishing, the man and camel ceased to sing and galloped back to town. They stood before my porch, staring up at me with beady eyes, and said, "You ruined it. You ruined it forever." How am I doing here? The idea. For us too, there was a wish to possess something beyond the world we knew. Let me start that again. For us too, there was a wish to possess something beyond the world we knew, beyond ourselves, beyond our power to imagine, something nevertheless in which we might see ourselves. And this desire came always in passing, in waning light, and in such cold that ice on the valley's lakes cracked and rolled, and blowing snow covered what earth we saw, and scenes from the past, when they surfaced again, looked not as they had, but ghostly and white, among false curves and hidden erasures. And never once did we feel we were close until the night wind said, "Why do this, especially now? Go back to the place you belong." And there appeared with its windows glowing, small, in the distance, in the frozen reaches, a cabin. And we stood before it, amazed at its being there, and would have gone forward and opened the door and stepped into the glow and warmed ourselves there, but that it was ours by not being ours and should remain empty. That was the idea. Orpheus alone. I don't mention Eurydice. She's in the background. It was an adventure much could be made of. A walk on the shores of the darkest known river, among the hooded, shoving crowds, by steaming rocks and rows of ruined huts half buried in the muck. Then to the great court with its marble yard, whose emptiness gave him the creeps, and to sit there in the sunken silence of the place and speak of what he had lost, what he still possessed of his loss, and then pulling out all the stops, describing her eyes, her forehead where the golden light of evening spread, the curve of her neck, the slope of her shoulders, everything down to her thighs and calves, letting the words come as if lifted from sleep to drift upstream against the water's will, where all the condemned and pointless labor, stunned by his voice's cadence, would come to a halt, and even the crazed, disheveled furies for the first time would weep, and the soot-filled air would clear just enough for her, the lost bride, to step through the image of herself and be seen in the light. As everyone knows, this was the first great poem, which was followed by days of sitting around in the houses of friends with his head back, his eyes closed, trying to will her return, but finding only himself again and again trapped in the chill of his loss, and finally, without a word, taking off to wander the hills outside of town, where he stayed until he had shaken the image of love and put in its place the world as he wished it would be, urging its shape and measure into speech of such newness that the world was swayed, and trees suddenly appeared in the bare place where he spoke, and lifted their limbs and swept the tender grass with the gowns of their shade, and stones, weightless for once, came and set themselves there, and small animals lay in the miraculous fields of grain and aisles of corn and slept. The voice of light had come forth from the body of fire, and each thing rose from its depths and shone as it never had. And that was the second great poem, which no one recalls anymore. The third and greatest came into the world as the world. Out of the unsayable, invisible source of all longing to be, it came as things come that will perish, to be seen or heard a while like the coating of frost or the movement of wind, and then no more. It came in the middle of sleep, like a door to the infinite, and circled by flame came again at the moment of waking, and sometimes remote and small, it came as a vision with trees by a weaving stream, brushing the bank with their violet shade, with somebody's limbs scattered among the matted, mildewed leaves nearby, with his severed head rolling under the waves, breaking the shifting columns of light into a swirl of slivers and flecks. It came in a language untouched by pity, in lines lavish and dark, where death is reborn and sent into the world as a gift, so the future with no voice of its own, nor hope of ever becoming more than it will be, might mourn. A change of pace now. These few poems that I'm going to read now have no titles. They're merely numbered. If dawn breaks the heart, and the moon is a horror, and the sun is nothing but the source of torpor, then of course I would have been silent all these years, and would not have chosen to go out tonight in my new dark blue double-breasted suit, and to sit in a restaurant with a bowl of soup before me to celebrate how good life has been and how it has culminated in this instant. The harmonies of wholesomeness have reached their apogee, and I am a quiver with satisfaction, and you look good too. I love your gold teeth and your dyed hair, a little green, a little yellow, and your weight, which is finally up where we never thought it would be. Oh, my partner, my beautiful death, my black paradise, my fusty intoxicant, my symbolist muse, give me your breast, or your hand, or your tongue that sleeps all day behind its wall of reddish gums. Lay yourself down on the restaurant floor and recite all that's been kept from my happiness. Tell me I have not lived in vain, that the stars will not die, that things will stay as they are, that what I have seen will last, that I was not born into change, that what I have said has not been said for me. I'm going to skip that one. It happened years ago and in somebody else's dining room. Madam X begged to be relieved of a sexual pain that had my name written all over it. Those were the days when so many things of a sexual nature seemed to happen. And my name, I believed, was written on all of them. Madam X took my hand under the table, placed it on her thigh, then moved it up. You would never know what a woman with such blue eyes and blonde hair was not wearing. Did I suffer knowing that I was wanted for the wrong reasons? Of course. And it has taken me years to recover. We don't give parties like that anymore. These days we sit around and sigh. We like the sound of it, and it seems to combine weariness and judgment, even to suggest no eggs for the moment, no sausages either. Just come, take me away, and put me to bed. And the last of these, I was visiting the shabby villa of a friend, full of rooms curtained against the sun, with marble floors uncarpeted and cold. He had invited a few Russian women for dinner. I remember liking the custard, which none of the other guests touched. I felt alone. The women began to blow out the candles. I wondered if they too had been to the delicatessen of love. No, they had been to Italy, they said. When I returned to my room, I put on my overcoat and got into bed. Soon I heard a rustling outside my door. It's me, Olga. May I come in? When she came in, I got out of bed, took off my clothes, and stood in front of the mirror. She joined me. Finally, we are safe from one another, she said. Yes, I admitted somewhat sadly. In the mirror, the body becomes simultaneously visible and untouchable. And so, in the gloomy villa, we spent the night staring at our naked bodies, cold, shining, while a fair fire roared in the hearth. 2002. I am not thinking of death, but death is thinking of me. He leans back in his chair, rubs his hand, strokes his beard, and says, I'm thinking of Strand. I'm thinking that one of these days I'll be out back swinging my scythe or holding my hourglass up to the moon, and Strand will appear in a jacket and tie, and together under the boulevard's leafless trees we'll stroll into the city of souls. And when we get to the great piazza with its marble mansions, the crowd that had been waiting there will welcome us with delirious cries, and their tears, turned hard and cold as glass from having been held back so long, will fall and clatter on the stones below. Oh, let it be soon, let it be soon. 2032. It is evening in the town of X, where Death, who used to love me, sits in a limo with a blanket spread across his thighs, waiting for his driver to appear. His hair is white, his eyes have gotten small, his cheeks have lost their luster. He has not swung his scythe in years or touched his hourglass. He is waiting to be driven to the Blue Hotel, the ultimate resort, where an endless silence fills the lilac-scented air and marble fish swim motionless in marble seas. And where is his driver? Ah, there she is, coming down the garden steps in heels, velvet evening gown, and golden boa blowing kisses to the trees. We're getting close to the end. What it was. 1. It was impossible to imagine, impossible not to imagine, the blueness of it, the shadow it cast, falling downward, filling the dark with the chill of itself, the cold of it falling out of itself, out of whatever idea of itself it described as it fell. A something, a smallness, a dot, a speck within a speck, an endless depth of smallness, a song, but less than a song, something drowning into itself, something going, a flood of sound, but less than a sound, the last of it, the blank of it, the tender, small blank of it filling its echo and falling and rising unnoticed and falling again, and always thus, and always because, and only because, once having been, it was. 2. It was the beginning of a chair. It was the gray couch. It was the walls, the garden, the gravel road. It was the way the ruined moonlight fell across her hair. It was that, and it was more. It was the wind that tore at the trees. It was the fuss and clutter of clouds, the shore littered with stars. It was the hour which seemed to say that if you knew what time it really was, you would not ask for anything again. It was that. It was certainly that. It was also what never happened, a moment so full that when it went as it had to, no grief was large enough to contain it. It was the room that appeared unchanged after so many years. It was that. It was the hat she'd forgotten to take, the pen she left on the table. It was the sun on my hand. It was the sun's heat. It was the way I sat, the way I waited for hours, for years. It was that, just that. Black Sea. One clear night, while the others slept, I climbed the stairs to the roof of the house, and under a sky strewn with stars, I gazed at the sea, at the spread of it, the rolling crests of it raked by the wind, becoming like bits of lace tossed in the air. I stood in the long, whispering night, waiting for something, a sign, the approach of a distant light, and I imagined you coming closer, the dark waves of your hair mingling with the sea, And the dark became desire, and desire the arriving light. The nearness, the momentary warmth of you as I stood on that lonely height, watching the slow swells of the sea break on the shore and turn briefly into glass and disappear. Why did I believe you would come out of nowhere? Why, with all that the world offers, would you come only because I was here? The next time. 1. Nobody sees it happening, but the architecture of our time is becoming the architecture of the next time. And the dazzle of light upon the waters is as nothing beside the changes wrought therein. Just as our waywardness means nothing against the steady pull of things over the edge. Nobody can stop the flow, but nobody can start it either. Time slips by. Our sorrows do not turn into poems, and what is invisible stays that way. Desire has fled, leaving only a trace of perfume in its wake. And so many people we loved have gone, and no voice comes from outer space, from the folds of dust and carpets of wind, to tell us that this is the way it was meant to happen, that if only we knew how long the ruins would last, we would never complain. 2. Perfection is out of the question for people like us. So why plug away at the same old self when the landscape has opened its arms and given us marvelous shrines to flock towards? The great motels to the west are waiting. In somebody's yard, a pristine dog is hoping that we'll drive by, and on the rubber surface of a lake, people bobbing up and down will wave. The highway comes right to the door, so let's take off before the world out there burns up. Life should be more than the body's weight working itself from room to room. A turn through the forest will do us good. So will a spin among the farms. Just think of the chickens strutting, the cows swinging their udders and flicking their tails at flies. And one can imagine prisms of summer light breaking against the silent haze-filled sleep of the farmer and his wife. 3. It could have been another story, the one that was meant instead of the one that happened. Living like this, hoping to revise what has been false or rendered unreadable, is not what we wanted. Believing that the intended story would have been like a day in the West when everything is tirelessly present, the mountains casting their long shadow over the valley where the wind sings its circular tune and trees respond with a dry clapping of leaves, was overly simple, no doubt, and short-sighted. For soon the leaves, having gone black, would fall, and the annulling snow would pillow the walk, and we, with shovels in hand, would meet, bow, and scrape the sidewalk clean. What else would there be this late in the day for us but desire to make amends and start again, the sun's compassion as it disappears? 2 more poems. Some last words. 1. It is easier for a needle to pass through a camel than for a poor man to enter a woman of means. Just go to the graveyard and ask around. 2. Eventually you slip outside, letting the door bang shut on your latest thought. What was it anyway? Just go to the graveyard and ask around. 3. Negligence is the perfume I love, Oh, Fedora, Fedora, if you want any, just go to the graveyard and ask around. 4. The bones of the buffalo, the rabbit at sunset, the wind and its double, the trees, the town. Just go to the graveyard and ask around. 5. If you think good things are on their way and the world will improve, don't hold your breath. Just go to the graveyard and ask around. You over there, why do you think of this? Why do you ask if this is the valley of limitless blue and if we are its prisoners? Just go to the graveyard and ask around. Life is a dream that is never recalled when the sleeper awakes. If this is beyond you, magnificent one, just go to the graveyard and ask around. And finally, the end. The end. Not everyone knows what he shall sing at the end, watching the pier as the ship sails away, or what it will seem like when he's held by the sea's roar, motionless there at the end, or what he shall hope for once it is clear that he'll never go back, when the time has passed to prune the rose or caress the cat, when the sunset torching the lawn and the full moon icing it down no longer appear. Not everyone knows what he'll discover instead. When the weight of the past leans against nothing, and the sky is no more than remembered light, and the stories of Cirrus and Cumulus come to a close, and all the birds are suspended in flight. Not everyone knows what is waiting for him, or what he shall sing when the ship he is on slips into darkness there at the end. Thank you.